Alright, welcome back everyone, and now it is time to take a look at how I believe the presidential race will go. We've looked at the Senate races, now let's take a look at the big enchilada, the one everyone is here for, the presidential election. We have two parties in this country. We're a two-party system. It's good. We'll get into that another time. Let's take a look at the states. No one doubts where they're going to go. And we'll start with the Democratic Party, and we'll go west to east because I'm weird like that. Washington State, Oregon, Hawaii, and California. There is no doubt how those 78 electoral votes will go. They'll be in the Democratic column. Then we travel across the country and we land on Illinois. There's no doubt where Illinois' 19 electoral votes will go. They'll go in the Democratic column. Chicagoland is where a majority of the population lives. They vote overwhelmingly Democratic. It is where the money is in the state. That is where the votes will go. So that is 97 electoral votes for Harris. Let's go across the eastern seaboard. The District of Columbia. Kamala Harris will win District of Columbia with like 90% of the vote. Then she'll win the state of Maryland. Delaware, the home state of the current incumbent president, Joe Biden. There's no doubt how it will go. Those 3 electoral votes will go in the Democratic column. New Jersey, 14 in the Democratic column. Connecticut, 7. Rhode Island, 4. Massachusetts, 11. And then New York and Vermont. So those are, for sure, safe, no doubt about them, Democratic states. Then we get into some of the more very, very likely Democratic states. Colorado, since 2008, has been safely in the Democratic column. New Mexico, likewise. In the early 2000s, this was competitive. 2004, George W. Bush flipped it. No longer a competitive state at all. That will go in the Democratic column. Virginia, another place where that 2008, it was a swing state. That was an area that, when it flipped hard. And that is in the Democratic column. 208. No doubt about them. Democratic votes for Kamala Harris. Let's talk about Maine. One of 2 states in the country to never vote for FDR. The overall statewide Maine and Nebraska divide their electoral votes up based on the at-large, which is the statewide vote, and the congressional district. The first congressional district, which is based around Portland, will vote for Kamala Harris, and it is a majority of the population, and she will win the statewide vote in Maine. Nebraska 2, which is Omaha. There's been polling there to indicate Kamala Harris is well ahead there, and I tend to agree with that. Some late-breaking outlier polls showed her within striking distance in the first, which is Lincoln. I think that's an outlier, so I really don't put much stock in that. And then the Granite State of New Hampshire is another one solidly in the Democratic column. Well, let's take a look at the flip side. the Republicans. Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and Utah, all safe Republican areas. Overwhelmingly so. The Dakotas, the statewide in Nebraska, plus the 1st and the 3rd. Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Iowa. Oh, I almost forgot one on the Democratic side. Governor Walz's home state of Minnesota. That's in the blue column. No doubt about it. Minnesota has voted blue since 1972. Or no, 1976. Sorry, 1976. It has always voted for the Democrats. Didn't even vote for Reagan in 84. It was the only state that Mondale won. His home state. And he won it barely. Okay. Back to our map here. Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, South Carolina, and my home state of Alabama and the Hoosier state are all safely in the Republican column. Texas, as is Alaska. Almost forgot you over there, Alaska. Alright, so in the past, Ohio and Florida had been the swingiest of the swings. They were the states everybody focused on. But now, they are very safely in the Republican column. Florida will be within a couple of percentage points, and Ohio will be 10 to single-digit percentage on election night. But they're not being competitive at all. No one's competing over these electoral votes. Texas, Colin Allred's ran a great campaign out there, but it's not going to be enough, and Harris is not going to win Texas. And then the second congressional district in Maine, a very rural part of the state. Trump has won it twice. I think he'll win it a third time. This is where the election will be won or lost. 93 electoral votes across 7 states. Let's get at it. Early voting from Nevada indicates a Republican lead. But the thing you have to understand about Nevada is Clark County has it is the dominant population center in the state, and it has a well-organized Democratic Party in Clark County that gets the vote out on election day, or make sure that people mail their vote by mail ballots back. And I believe that once again, those ballots are going to come through and carry Nevada for the Democrats. Republicans have pretty much, in my opinion, at this point in Nevada, exhausted every Republican vote that they can. Arizona was once a reliably Republican state. It also was a state that was Trumpy before Trump, but it's also experienced a population surge. And Arizona is the home state of the adopted home state of John McCain. And Donald Trump is haunted by the ghost of John McCain. I think that the ghost of John McCain is going to be smiling and laughing over Phoenix again because Kamala Harris is going to carry the state of Arizona. Now, let's take a look at these other states. Georgia's had a really robust early voter turnout, but once again, I think this may be a case of Republicans exhausting all of their rural votes. Metro Atlanta, which has about 55% of the statewide population, and is now the driving force in determining the winner of statewide races in Georgia, has a higher early voter turnout than the statewide turnout. But they have more votes to turn out on election day. Your rural parts of the state, your very Republican areas, have pretty much every voter there who wants to vote has already voted early. They could have single-digit turnout in some of these rural counties on election day. And I think that's what's going to happen. And I think that in the end, Georgia's going to come through in a big way for the Democratic Party again, as it did in 2016. North Carolina, the Research Triangle, and a lot of newer residents, highly educated residents with college degrees, and we know how they are voted. Those voters are voting now. If you have a college degree, and especially an advanced degree, the chances that you are voting Republican are very, very slim. And that is a significant change since 2016. That's one of the effects that Donald Trump has had on the Republican Party. So, North Carolina goes in the blue column. And now, here we are. And by the way, that puts Harris over the top. And we haven't even got to these. The blue wall. I think that when the blue wall swings, it swings in one direction. And I just have believed for a while now that the way one goes, they all go. There's a lot of polls recently out of Wisconsin that show Harris has a pretty consistent lead. Michigan, they're tied or close to tied. The real big thing to watch there is turnout. In Detroit, and the county clerk said that she expects between a 50 to 55% turnout based on early voting trends for voter turnout in Detroit. Democrats need that to be above 50% in Detroit to win Michigan, and I think that's going to occur. So Michigan goes blue. Pennsylvania, Trump's MC, I guess, at his little event there in Madison Square Garden on Sunday about Puerto Ricans. It's going to definitely hurt him in Pennsylvania, and I think that goes in the Democratic column. So I believe in the end it'll be 319 for the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris, and 219 for former President Trump, and a very comfortable, decisive victory in the Electoral College. Popular vote-wise, you're probably looking at a result similar to 2020, where the Democrats win by about 5 to 7 million popular votes. I think there's been a lot of junk polls put out in the last few weeks by the Trump campaign trying to muddy the waters. But I believe this race is essentially a referendum on Donald Trump once again, and that's never good news for Trump. So in my opinion, it's 319 for Harris, she wins, and 219 for Trump, he loses.